Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. Welcome to Oslo, Alexander.
Thank you.
Glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
If any of you were at the Norsk Opera og Ballet last night, you would have heard the performance of Alexander's piece Sensate Focus by Plus Minus Ensemble. I mean, it seems like a pretty good place to start in talking about your particular work and interests. Sensate Focus is a piece which essentially features performers performing in darkness, and with every sound that's made, they're kind of brightly illuminated. So that could be just one very, very short, instantaneous sound with a flash of light, or it could be a lot longer duration, and it kind of builds up in different patterns. Maybe we should just start off by seeing a little bit, just to sort of give people an idea.
I think it's a good idea, yes. I actually already have the recording of yesterday, but I think it needs to be edited a bit, so I'm going to show a tiny clip of the premiere. It starts somewhere in the middle of the piece and then has one or two cuts, but I think all the basic principles are in there.
It's a little taste of Sensate Focus. Maybe you can tell us something, Alexander, about how composed is that? What are we seeing something spontaneous or very planned there?
It's actually pretty composed. So the music is entirely composed, and the whole structure is also very fixed. So it's the musicians play with click track, so the timing is fixed, and this click track, well, I'm not sure if everybody knows what a click track is, like a metronome in the ear for the musicians, and this kind of used to synchronize lights, electronics, processing, and the performance. And almost all the pitches are notated in a classical fashion, so to say. But the notation for the piece kind of jumps back and forth between the traditional 5-line system, in which you normally notate pitches and rhythms, to a 1-line system where you just have notes with a certain duration, and the duration, and those notes always have a kind of an icon on top of them, and this icon then kind of stands for a certain action, and there are, like, I think, I'm not really sure, like I think 10 or 15 different sorts of movements, or categories of movements, like sort of continuous things, short movements, movements that are sort of simulate playing movements, kind of artificial movements that are in the air that don't really have anything to do with the instrument at all. And so this is also pretty fixed, and but the precise execution of those movements leaves a certain freedom for the performers. So sometimes it would just say make a continuous movement which lasts for one whole note, and this is then something that is decided together with the ensemble, with the musicians during the rehearsal. But I would say the piece is really clearly recognizable, even though it has a certain amount of freedom from time to time. It will always be very much recognizable as this specific piece.
I think you've got a little bit of the score there. Maybe it's interesting just to see, just to get an idea of what these performers are actually having thrown at them. So it's in a way I was quite surprised to see that you actually, there's quite a lot of manuscript music stave work in a lot of your at the basis of a lot of your compositions.
It's true. I kind of in the writing process, it's always, on the one hand, sort of determining the whole setup, like in a technical way or also in a theatrical way, and then it's always kind of trying to find the notation that works best. I don't really choose it because I feel so closely related to the classical background or to this tradition, but sometimes it's just the most effective way to do it, and it lets you reduce information on a small paper. And perhaps like I said, so for example, here we see the guitar playing a few notes. Then for example, here we see this is the voice of the violin. We also saw that in the short clip I played. This icon here stands for a whip gesture, which was this. I don't know. I think it was in the short clip I showed too. So you see, always it's kind of going back and forth between a 5-line system with notes and 1-line systems with the gestures. And that's how it kind of continues and goes on. It actually looks much more, it actually, if you look at the score, it really looks pretty easy. And then again, it's sort of is really challenging for the musicians to manage to do this, because it's kind of concentrating on different things, like switching from playing to making movements, and it's even that alone is also is pretty challenging for a musician to have this, I don't know, like presence and so on. And then it gets especially difficult if it's in the dark.
Yeah, it comes with its own problems.
Yeah.
But interesting is last night, on the Ultima program, there's your piece. Also elsewhere there was the double vision performance, Robin Fox and Atom TM, with another piece which is very much to do with kind of connecting sound and very intense light effects. Yeah. It's definitely one of the kind of sub-themes running through this year's Ultima. You studied bioinformatics in Leipzig.
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit about what you studied and how that brought you towards the kind of work that you're doing now with gesture and light and all that stuff?
Actually, to be honest, I can say what I studied. I studied computer science with a focus in cognitive science and mostly on artificial intelligence, so neural networks, perception, analysis. Let's say I did like EEG studies, things like that, kind of models of how the brain works and how perception works. And I used to do music all the time in parallel. And I actually get this asked pretty often, and it's not really like this then really led me to continue the same thing in composition. I would rather say I can now use a lot of techniques, skills I learned in my first studies, but I think the driving force behind what I do and the motivation for what I do, I think first really came out of the music itself. And if we consider the kind of theatrical, gestural aspects in my work, I would say it kind of originated from the performing styles on stage, kind of then more in my background, kind of an improvised free jazz music with all the kind of physical activity on stage. This is perhaps later we can also show one piece that kind of deals with that more. So I was first really kind of interested in the expressiveness activity on stage, and then, so that for me really was the starting point to focus on this kind of approach in music. And this was like, I think like 5 or 6 years ago when I started doing this kind of thing. And now sort of reached at a point where I try to, with new pieces, look at things a bit differently. And I think this is also, or this is the case here with Sensate Focus. Perhaps should I say a few words about this? Kind of, I mean, the name, well, is a bit of a joke too, because sensation focusing is also a sexual therapy, which really has nothing to do with the piece at all. It's much more about the fact that you kind of how you focus your intention and how in this piece the light achieves that. So it's like in a lot of things I do, it's about the fact, like you said, like in this double vision thing too, to not only focus on the music, but to treat what is happening and what you can see sort of in an equal way, let's say. And so on the one hand, in this piece, you can use the lights, the strobe lights, the strong lights in a way to, how should I say it, like as an effect, as a kind of, if you want to call it that, like sort of rock show thing where you where it's in hopefully intense situation, and it kind of intensifies everything that the musicians are doing. Aside from that, well, kind of like what I said before, gives the focus, helps you kind of look at different things you wouldn't look at if you didn't have the lights, for example. It's really strange if you rehearse the piece. It's really something very different if you rehearse it in without the lights. I mean, it's really something completely different. But so this is kind of the one aspect to it. But what I'm actually really interested in is to use the lights in a way that for me kind of represents like video sampling, so to say. For me it's, well, doing something in real time on a stage that you would normally much rather have like in an editing program or in digital programs where you have like clips of people, of videos, and you kind of arrange things together. You take something there, you take something there, and this kind of turning them on and off again, the musicians on stage, for me, really it makes it really artificial, and it kind of takes away this kind of natural thing where people are on stage just musicians, or if you look at it in a more general way, even like humans, it's more like a very abstract representation, and for me has a very digital like kind of avatar, like in the internet sense, feel to it. And going on in this direction a bit further, it also for me really deals with the sort of the kind of machine-human aspect as well, as it's, well, they're kind of really stereotyped to like something really artificial and mechanical. And this is, I don't know, we didn't see it in the clip. As the piece goes on, there are sections where they start playing like really like robots, like repeated notes, which is like, I think at some point 70 measures, just quarter notes. And it's in accelerando going, I think, from 100 BPM to 999 BPM. So it also deals with the impossibility to actually to cope with that as a performer. And yeah, those are perhaps things I had in mind when working on this piece.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think you've mentioned elsewhere about this. One of your aims is to sort of get at the highest intensity possible in a musical performance. I think that's something interesting. I mean, obviously a lot of contemporary music has pushed in that way, but I think something about the addition of visuals, like flashing lights, seems to sort of help that in a way. And I think, isn't there a kind of background to that piece in psychological experiment using cats?
There is, but to be honest, it's a little bit like the reference to the sexual therapy. It's both of those are a bit of a not to be meant too seriously. Yeah, it's. I actually really don't like writing program notes, so I kind of try to put.
I don't mean to intrude.
No.
I was at the performance yesterday,
Uh-huh.
so I was very interested. I was terribly impressed with the precision of the performance. I didn't know about the click track. That helps explain it to some extent. But I commented to the person sitting next to me, who you probably know, Ian Pace. I said, they must have had to rehearse within an inch of their lives to get synchronized for those lights. And he said, no, their movement is making the lights.
No, it's not true.
I thought not, because there were times when the lights came on and they were not moving.
Yeah. Now you could do that. I actually also did that in other pieces, but it's not like this here. It's.
So they did have to rehearse and rehearse.
They did have to rehearse a bit, yes.
He's a professional.
And I think what is also perhaps not really clear is perhaps they also have music stands or music. I'm not really sure how well that was visible, because they just use kind of small iPads with
I saw that they
with the
music
score
stand,
on
but
it.
they had no time really to read because the lights were all
Yeah.
intermittently on.
No, so the trick is kind of that they have the score on the iPads, but with inverted colors. So it's black and just the notes are white, so they don't emit any light. So it's even if it's pitch black, they can still see the notes, and they don't have this glow in their face.
I'd like to maybe show another little extract of another piece of yours. I don't know, maybe Your Fox is a Dirty Gold. Or
Yeah,
something like
we
that,
could do that.
Which might illustrate a slightly different take on the sensor approach.
Absolutely. So should I say one or two words?
Maybe a little
before?
bit.
Yeah.
Introduce it a little bit. Yeah.
So before writing this piece, I've been working a lot with gestures in music too, and the initial approach was to use sensors which measure acceleration in the body movement. And I did a few pieces of those, and the one I want to show now is a piece where a singer has two motion sensors at the wrists and can, with her movement, control the electronics and actually also the light in this case. And she also has a guitar, which is used as a sort of artificial interface. It's kind of used as a control device rather than a guitar instrument. And I think that should be enough to understand what it's about.
You gotta be help! Put the fuck into position! You gotta be help! Put the fuck into position! And you'll be held with the fuck into position.
So this is really cut together out of a 15-minute piece, like very short sections.
So that's obviously emphasizing the performance dynamic there, and kind of playing with the presentation of in the world of rock. And so how conscious were you of that? And can you talk a little bit about the relationship of the performance style to the kind of the composition aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I take one tiny step back, before that I did a piece for a drummer, and that was kind of, so for me, so obvious what was happening there, like to take the sort of free jazz, hardcore playing, and then just transform it to the sensors. I didn't really have to think about anything at all there. It was just a natural kind of combination. And when I decided to write a piece for her, for a singer, I really had this kind of actually a problem at the beginning, because I knew I had the setup that I would have the sensors at her arms, but I really didn't have any like motivation or reason, or I didn't want to have like this kind of artificial, just I don't know, a bit like contemporary feeling, fiddling around in the air for no reason, or just for the technology sake of it. And I think that also kind of holds true for most of the pieces I write. I kind of try to, I don't know, let's say, come up with a setup or scenario as a starting point, which I then kind of try to work with or transform a little. And for me, this, kind of using the vocabulary out of this kind of rock world was a kind of, I don't know, gave me a starting point, or a set of actions I could work with. And so this is basically how it starts, like kind of typical, but like very expressive, you could say. And that is also an aspect that really did interest me a lot, kind of because I built those sensors, and I write the software in which it says, or in which it is determined how the sensors control the electronics. So one big aim for me is to come up with something that gives the performer a certain amount of freedom or form of expression. And so that is the one aspect of it, and that is also visible in this piece, I would say. And on top of that, I then kind of tried to work with with this kind of relation between the gesture and the presence on stage and the sonic result. And this is one of the major benefits, you could say, of working with those kind of sensor interfaces, as it's unlike any other instruments in the real world, where you always have cause and effect linked together because of the physical relation. If you hit a drum hard, then it's going to be loud, and if you stroke it gently, it's going to be soft. And when designing the interface and the program modules that determine how it works, you kind of have the possibility to to do it in different ways too. And for me, this kind of became increasingly interesting, this kind of to play with that a bit. And it's also the way the guitar works. I think saw that briefly. There's, for example, the one thing where she does this sort of feedback movement things, which is all fake. None of this is actual feedback what we hear. It's all based on the sensors. Just like the guitar solo she plays, which is kind of goes below and higher than the register of the guitar, and so this, yes.
Yeah, no, you're touching on something that I wanted to bring up, which is it seems almost like from the moment when electricity started to enter music, you could think about the theremin, for example, in the early part of the 20th century. It seemed like that's been one of the dreams, is to sort of create this music of where gesture can be somehow disconnected from a physical instrument. And Pierre Schaeffer, the musique concrète inventor, also used to work with something called the pupitre d'espace, the spatial desk, which could sort of control sound around a space, and it was these kind of circular sensors around him. I'm not sure how well it actually worked in the end, but it was certainly something he was trying at an early stage. And then I've seen in the 90s, I remember a group called Sensor Band, who were sort of working, I think they'd trained at Stein in the Netherlands. There was a lot of work at Stein, in fact, in the 90s on exactly that, creating sort of various electronic devices that could try and
Absolutely.
control music gesturally. Not all of them entirely successful, and like you said, it sometimes felt like it was using the technology just because you could.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about a project they were doing, a sort of massive project that took years, that was creating a kind of, it was to create a giant pair of inflatable lips that could basically blow into a trumpet.
Okay.
It seemed like, well, why not just get a human being to blow into a trumpet? It seemed absolutely insane. But in terms of your practice now, where do you see yourself fitting into that kind of lineage of gestural work? How do you feel that you're taking it further than it's gone before? If you do.
Well, you mentioned Steim and what they did there. They, I think, were especially by the Michael Weisfisch, who led the Steim, was a genius in making or using sensors at a very early time already in a super expressive, understandable, and performative way. And like I said before, I really saw myself trying to achieve exactly that and to use a bit of different technology, but actually, well, some of the stuff I use, they also use at Stein. So I actually see a lot of connections there, also I think with the aesthetics as well. And I think where I try for myself to continue, or I think I had like 4 pieces that dealt mostly with the expressive, or like really kind of musical, or stayed within the purely musical realm. And for me, the whole gestural, not only the gestural, but also the presence of the performer on stage and how it kind of deals with media. I sort of tried to move it a bit further away from the purely musical performance, but to bring in more of extra musical content, I would say, and I think to also not just use the interface as an expressive instrument, but rather to make the interface or the connection between the movement and the result as a key part of the piece. I think that is are some strategies I find interesting or worthwhile going after.
And you mentioned that you'd had experience in more sort of improvised music context a while back.
Yeah.
Obviously now kind of moving into a more sort of composer role where you have more control over sound. Was it partly because of maybe a feeling of dissatisfaction with the sort of total open-endedness of improvisation that's maybe brought you to where you are now?
Yes, definitely. So back then, I used to improvise in different groups, played in kind of noise hardcore groups, and played a lot of concert as a solo performer too, with guitar, little instruments, microphones and things like that. And yes, I think it was exactly that I came to a point where I said, okay, I want to structure things better, and I want to have the ability to shape things better, to make it clearer, to especially as I think my aesthetic really heavily relies on clear cuts, on blocks of events and content, and there's just something you can do much better if you plan ahead a little. So that kind of drove me to start composing, but then very quickly I realized, and I think it's pretty apparent in most of the pieces I write, that I really heavily draw from the experiences I had before in electronica and improvised music. So.
And you kind of actually, there's a sort of meta level as well in a lot of your work, isn't there? I mean, you've kind of used, there's a piece, Star Me Kitten, I think, which incorporates music by other people. The Thing, the Nordic noise improv group, and some other material as well. And so, there's a kind of level in which you're kind of invoking sort of sampling culture there as well. And
absolutely, I think I'm drawing from a lot of different styles and also kind of combining them and cutting them against each other, but I sort of don't see myself so much as the conceptual postmodernist composer, but I much rather follow kind of subjective lines, and more so I really kind of only mostly just draw from experiences I actually had before. So it is not a sort of, not so much an intellectual exercise in saying, okay, I want to combine reggae with glitch hop, but it's more something that kind of, it's more of a natural development based on previous experiences I had.
I mean, yeah. 1 minute, okay. Wow, I'm gonna have the absolute killer question now. I mean, I guess you find yourself often described as a composer, which I guess, and you have a very resonant surname as well within that world. But I mean, do you find that this description of a composer now is actually creates expectations that really are not there so much for today's composer? What do you see your kind of role now? You know, it's not the word composer still, I think, suggests this idea of somebody in an attic, writing on manuscript for an orchestra. But
I think my daily practice is really not like that. It's really kind of recording myself doing things, editing in a video program, arranging sounds and other things, and working with lights, with the fog machine. So it's really much more than sitting at my desk writing notes. So it's more than that, and I don't, to be honest, I don't think about it so much, or the same with whether what I do really is new music or contemporary music is another question. So I actually don't think about it so much, but perhaps as a last sentence, I actually like the word compose in the sense to kind of bring together, to arrange, and that in a broader sense, like different materials, let's say, ranging from light to body movement to sounds, and in that sense, I'm glad to call myself a composer.
Great. Well, thanks very much.
Thanks.
Schubert.
Thanks a lot.